Yeah, that's so weird. Usually people just pop on. I'll invite you again.
Hey,
Oh, there you are. Yay.
Ollie.
Hi, how are you?
Great. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, thanks so much for coming. Okay, and people are jumping in here, so we can go ahead and jump. So welcome to the Craft of Crime Fiction. I'm Polly Stewart. This is my IG interview show where I talk to writers of thrillers and mysteries and crime fiction about how they do what they do. And I'm so thrilled to have May Cobb with me today, author of the new My Summer Darlings and also The Hunting Wives. I'm sure I'll have lots of reasons to hold these up. And just kind of a brief introduction here. So I met May on Twitter because we realized that we had sons of the same age on the autism spectrum. So I realized at that point she's an amazing advocate. And then I read her books, or I read her first novel, The Hunting Wives, and I realized what an incredible writer she is. And then I'm sure a lot of you know what a tireless supporter of other writers she is, how generous she is with her time. And May, I know last night I saw you were at the launch for Katie Gutierrez's More Than You Know. So how are you feeling today?
I'm feeling so great. Thank you for that sweet introduction, Polly. I'm just happy to be here, and thanks for having me on. And I see Bookstagrammer Carrie from San Antonio here, and thanks everyone for being here. Um, yeah, I'm feeling great. It was a great launch. Katie's book is just mind blowing. Yeah, so
Good.
being a
Yeah.
book club pick. Oh, hey, Clover. I see Clover from Canada, a friend, a sweet family friend. And now I don't know, I put the comments up and I don't know how to get rid of them. I'm so low tech. Anyway, maybe you should ask me questions.
And since people are, starting to hop on here, I'll say too, if anyone wants to drop a question in the chat as we're talking, please feel free to do that, and I will keep an eye on that. Um, so, May, I wonder if you could start. My Summer Darlings has been out for a month or so, but for anyone who hasn't had a chance to pick up the book yet, could you tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah, so My Summer Darlings follows three best friends. They're lifelong friends, and they're each in their, like, they're approaching 40. And they live in a small East Texas town, and it takes place over a very hot summer. And soon a mysterious, handsome stranger moves into town, and he upends each of their lives. They each become a with him, and it's just like sex, secrets, and murder and wine.
All the things we love about summer, except the murder part. Great. Um, so you've said in other interviews, and I think the last time we talked, that the novel was partly inspired by the witches of Eastwick. And I've never either read the book or seen the movie. So I wonder if you could talk a little bit about that and how you were playing with those ideas.
Yeah, so I just so the movie is similar in a way. It's like Susan Sarandon, Cher, and Michelle Pfeiffer. And then Jack Nicholson moves into town. And there's in the film there's like a paranormal aspect. He's like the devil. And so I wanted to play with that trope of a stranger moving to town and then the female friendships, but set it in present day and then none of the paranormal stuff. Um, and I just really love that movie because you really get a sense of woman becomes entranced by him, and it's so. And I really wanted to go there with my characters. Why best friends would turn on each other, stab each other in the back, for a guy. Um, so I hope I pulled it off. And yeah, that's kind of the Witches of Eastwick connection.
I love that because you said the novel begins with these friendships between Jen and Kitty and Cynthia, and they've known each other for a really long time. So you'd think those would be strong bonds, but then they get really kind of upended. Um, so one thing I loved is, we know that they've known each other since high school, and we'll get these kind of brief flashbacks to their previous life. How have each of these characters changed over time?
Do you mean over the course of the novel, or do you mean?
Well, when they all come back together, it seems like they're playing off those high school personas, but they've also grown in some ways. So what did you want to do with that?
Yeah, I wanted to show a little bit of like class stuff. So Kitty and Cynthia are pretty well set up. They're wealthy. They don't have to work. They don't have to worry about money. They live in gorgeous homes. Jen was in their station in Austin, but then her husband cheated on her, so she moves back home. She's living in her parents' rent house, and I wanted to sort of show the friction between, like, struggling for money and then having friends that don't. And then also uh, they're envious of Jen because they think that she thinks she's more like cultured or something because she's been in a big city. And so it's this weird, like, finding their way back to each other, as adults. And they're each only children. You have like this primal sister bonds going on. But yeah, still just like they are, like they're in high school, but then, they're almost 40. So it's interesting coming back to old friends when you've been away from them.
Yeah, I love that part of the story. And I wonder, I know you grew up in East Texas. Is that kind of a dynamic that you see when you come back to town, that the way people have changed and also stayed the same?
Yeah, for sure. It's interesting. A lot of people from my hometown have left and they've come back, and we're just kind of everywhere. So it's funny. Like, well, I actually met my husband when I came back for the holidays one year. It's like a Hallmark movie, and he's from there too. Anyway, yeah, it's interesting, the different dynamics and stuff. So I yeah, I'm not going to talk about my friends back home. I'm just kidding.
We won't ask you to give away any secrets.
Yeah.
So you can tell us maybe instead about Will, the love interest, and what is it about him that makes him kind of universally attractive to these women?
I think, well, first of all, like, he's hot, and and he's irresistible to each one, sort of for a different reason. So for Jen, like, he has this kind of like love of books, and so does she, and they have that connection. And then she's also heartbroken and she's sworn off men, but then, oh my gosh, she's the single hot dude around the corner. And he seems so intelligent and worldly like her. And then for Kitty, it's more of a competition with him because he can tell that she can tell written her off from the get-go as like a Stepford wife or something, or a suburban housewife, and it's driving her crazy because she's used to men throwing themselves at her, so she's totally perplexed by it. So for her, it's almost like this conquest. And then for Cynthia is sort of the final domino to fall. Out of the women, she's the most sort of resistant to him and cold at first, but she's also the most repressed. So once he gets in there and he awakens not only like sexually stuff for her, but also artistically and other things that have long been buried, there's just absolutely no turning back for her. Um, so yeah, that's kind of the danger and the allure of Will Harding.
I love that you started with the fact that, of course, he's super hot, and you took a job of portraying that, but also the way he appeals to each of them differently. That makes a lot of sense, the way you set that up.
Thank
Uh,
you.
so I noticed, having read Devoured the Hunting Wives last summer, this is a very, you're in the same landscape, and there are some similarities, but structurally it's very different. It's in third person, this one, and you have these three point of view characters instead of one. Um, so how did you approach the writing of this novel differently, knowing you had those different technical challenges?
Yeah, I work with a freelance editor on all my novels, and she was like, you need to challenge yourself to do something different. And so then I decided, I love novels that have multiple points of view. I find them like, when you get tired of one character's voice and you kind of always have a favorite, then you get to get back to that person. So I thought, well, that would be fun. And my first novel was actually from two points of view, and then The Hunting Wives was just from one, and I liked that. And so I didn't want to stay in someone's head for 400 pages. And for Cynthia's character, her POV is from her diary, her secret journal she's keeping, and so that was a lot of fun too. And that helped me kind of add some texture to the book. It, you know, and not to give any away, but it kind of serves as a plot device later. But yeah, I found it to be almost liberating after living in my character's head in the Hunting Wives for so long, to be able to bounce around, and when I get tired of writing one, go to the next.
That makes sense. Yeah. And I love what you said about, we always have a favorite that we're happy to get back to. So there's kind of a built-in reward involved. Um, so I know you just said you're not going to do any spoilers. I obviously will try to not to do that either. But I noticed that the violence in this book is a little bit more out in the open than it was in The Hunting Wives, where it seems to mostly take place off the page. So what was it like to write those scenes?
It was, this is going to make me sound like a serial killer. It was fun. It was fun because I knew it was necessary, because the book is very soapy, you know. I don't want to use the word women's fiction like it's a bad thing, because it's not at all. I feel like my books are hybrid, like women's fiction thriller. But I knew this one in particular was, like I said, very soapy and sultry. So I knew that it did need some imminent danger injected in there. And I wanted the reader to be jolted every time they got to that passage. Like, yes, he's hot and this is fun and they're drinking, you know, watermelon punch, but there's a woman dying in the forest, and which one of these women is it? And it was interesting, because when I wrote it, I thought I knew who it was in the forest, and it kind of, but it was someone else as the book went on. So it was kind of like fun for me to discover what this person's trying to say as she's, you know, tied to a tree trunk or whatever it is. I'm like, is that what it was? I can't even remember what the book.
Yes.
Yeah.
Wow. You wrote this. Wow, that's so funny. I feel like now I want all the different like versions that went into this. I want the clue, possible different endings that you that you thought. Maybe we can talk about that sometime over wine.
Yes, for sure.
You use the word sultry, which reminds me of the list you made when the book was published for crime reads about your favorite salacious thrillers, and that's something you're definitely known for now, is including some pretty steamy sex scenes. So I'm wondering if do you think? Oh no, sorry, I didn't mean to embarrass you. But clearly it's a selling point for. If you think more crime.
I'm kind of. Can you?
Can you? Are you there, May?
So it kind of cut out there. I missed your question. Do you mind?
Oh yeah, not at all. I was just asking you if crime fiction needs more sex in it.
Oh, yes, I think it does. Like, I think it's such a fun element. And I love like the erotic thrillers of the 90s, the films like Basic Instinct and Fatal Attraction. And I don't know why. Maybe it's because I grew up with that stuff. I really do. I think it's, there's like sex is power, and there's just so many. It's such a deep well to go down. So I think it's interesting to have in thrillers.
Yeah, it's a good new territory, I think, you to mark out for yourself and other writers. So in terms of the setting for these books, we've talked about how this is set. Are you back? So I wanted to ask you about the setting of these novels. They're both set in East Texas. We've said that's where you grew up. Do you think you'll set future books there?
And I'm sorry if I didn't respond. There is a little bit of a lag for me sometimes. It's, even though I'm in Austin, sometimes my internet, like, it's like I'm in the woods or something. Yeah, my next thriller that will be out next summer, A Likeable Woman, is it's set in East Texas. But the next book I write, I'm definitely set it somewhere else, because I don't want to just, have everything take place in the woods. And, I need to challenge a new setting.
Okay. Yeah, that's interesting, because it does seem like part of your brand now, but it's good to, oops, we might have lost May. Let me see if I can get her back with us here. So anyone who's still hanging out, if you want to drop any questions in the chat, we will. Are you here? You're back with us. Can you hear me, May?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, yeah, you're good now.
Okay. Okay, great.
Um, okay, so we were talking about the setting, and I know you've said in other interviews that readers have been surprised by how much your characters drink. So I did want to ask you about that because it is kind of a constant in the scenes, and you've said you've actually toned it down compared to general atmosphere. So what kind of role does alcohol play, do you think?
I think it's just, it would be like disingenuous to not uh, include in a novel about these East Texas women, because it really is just so much part of the culture there that it just goes hand in hand with their characters. And I tried to dial it back a little in this one from the Hunting Wives, so that so the bad decisions weren't alcohol based; they were more like lust based. But I definitely wanted the women to still feel real and, like women you would meet if you lived in East Texas. So, hey, Beck. Hey, Elliot. I'm seeing some more friends join us. Hey, Abel.
We're getting some questions here too that I think you can see them, May, but someone said definitely try setting a book in other parts of Texas. That would be fun to see. I'd agree with that. And then Jen asked, I love to hear readers' routines, especially women with children. What is your writing routine?
I basically get up and I try to write 3 to 4 pages in the morning and always wrap it up by noon. And if I'm under deadline, I have to write a lot more, but that's kind of the goal. Because in the afternoon, my brain is fried, and I write 5 days a week, and I try to not write on the weekends, so I can be with my son because he's out of school or whatever. And during the pandemic, though, it was a lot different because he was home with us, so it was a lot of stolen moments, and I don't even want to think about what we all went through.
But you should be so proud of what you accomplished during that time because you got your first book out and second one written, and that's pretty amazing.
Thank you. Thank you.
So Elliot said, do you think you will step out of your comfort zone in regard to genre?
That's interesting. Elliot, I need to talk to you about something. He's my good friend. I don't know that I will. I really do like writing thrillers. However, I do have the nonfiction book that I want to finally finish. So when I have a little break in my publishing schedule, that's what I'm going to tackle next. So yeah, I guess with that one, it is stepping out, but it's also coming back home because I've been working on it for 25 years. So
Yeah, I interviewed you once in the past, but I've never gotten to ask you about this. So this is about Rahsaan Roland Kirk, right? The great saxophonist who played multiple phones at a time. So tell us a little bit about how you got into his work.
I'm so glad that you know his name and rattled it off so quickly. That's very impressive. Yeah, I first heard his music in college, and the song spoke to me so much that I raced to the record store, and then I started to read about him. And he lost his eyesight at 2 in an accident, but he was just a man of like, an indomitable will that would accomplish anything he set out to do. And he heard this music in his dreams, and then he found like these saxophones in like an antique store, and he taught himself as a teenager to play them. And it's something no one else has done before since, not at that level. And he probably would be worldwide famous if he hadn't died young. He just had some, really like bad family health history. So he had a stroke, and he died at 42. He was way too young. So yeah, his music is phenomenal. He overcame staggering odds. The first stroke, paralyzed half his body, and doctors said he'd never play again. And he did. He taught himself to play with one hand and was able to tour again before his death, and make another album. And he's my biggest hero.
Oh. So this will be a nonfiction book, I guess, for you, which is very, very different. Have you done a lot of research? Have you done interviews? Like, what is that project?
Yes, I've done years of research. I've stalked his widow, and I've stayed at her house for weeks at a time, and I've talked to hundreds of people that knew him. And it's going to be like kind of like my quest to find him and the journey it sent me on, intertwined with his stories. So it's kind of a hybrid. It's not a straight biography at all. It's basically about how much he moved me to do this, because it was such a compulsion. It was like I didn't even, there was no question about it. Like I had to find out more about him.
Sounds almost more like a memoir kind of. Are you under contract for that book, or do you have an idea when it'll be
I'm
finished?
Yes, I'm not, but I'm looking to be. So I have to explore some new avenues. I had an agent for it in the past, and I got an offer, but they wanted a straight biography, so I turned it down. And it's just been like a roller coaster kind of. But yeah, I'm hoping early in the new year to find the space to finish it, because I'm almost finished, but I need to go back and really finish it. So
And you've been doing a lot, including your next novel that is A Likeable Woman. So can you tell us a little bit about that project?
yeah, so A Likeable Woman, I'm in the middle of edits on now, and it's a story about a woman in her 30s, and since she was a teenager, everyone has told her that her mother committed suicide. She never believed it, and so she sort of fled her East Texas town, and she's been living in LA, but not really living her best life. She's been kind of like Arrested Development, and she has vowed never to return home. But then her frenemy is having a vow renewal party, and then her grandmother finally writes to her and says, I have something of your mother's, something she was keeping in secret, and I think you're right about the way she died. So she feels compelled to come home over this weekend, and she starts to investigate, and then of course danger starts to lurk around her, and it's more of like a closed circle mystery of who has done what, because the mother probably didn't die by suicide, or did she? That's kind of the setup of it.
That sounds amazing, and is maybe a little bit darker than your previous books, or would you say that?
I think so. I think it's darker, and I think it's definitely more, I would say, I tried to write in the vein of like Lucy Foley, to where it is more not traditional mystery, but not so it is more thrillery. It's also, I would say, more like psychological suspense. You're really in this person's head, and maybe a little more, I don't want to say horror because it's not, but she's definitely like gets creepy messages and is jumping, at every sound in the forest, that type of vibe. So it's different. It's definitely a departure for me. So I hope people will come along with me if there's not like crazy sex in it.
I think they will. I think you've definitely built up a great audience. And I wanted to ask you about the title, because you'd mentioned when we were emailing that you'd also thought about calling it An Unlikable Woman. And I know, like all women writers, you've had some experiences with people calling your characters unlikable. So what was kind of coming into that title?
Yeah, that's such a great question, and I'm glad you asked. So, the novel does have a book within a book. So her mom's left behind this unfinished manuscript, and her mother was considered a quote unquote unlikable, woman in the neighborhood. She was an artist, so more of a free thinker, and that's why Kira, the main character, feels like she was murdered by someone in the neighborhood. And it was also sort of my tongue in cheek jab at people that just insist that female characters have to be likable. So my main character actually probably is my most relatable and likable character. But I also think she's still very complicated and complex. But I kind of wanted to poke at that notion that you know female characters have to be likable, and they can't be ambitious, and they can't color outside of the lines. And so I hope the book explores those issues, especially as it relates to her mom and her mother's death, and then how society views the main character as a single woman when everyone else in Texas is married up and she's coming back, and just all the things.
So that's really interesting. And I like the way you're kind of describing it sounds like the main character and the mother are kind of playing off each other, you know,
Yes.
likability. So great.
Yeah.
Do you have a release date for that or a pub date?
I think August 2023.
So we'll have to wait another year.
Yeah. I got to get the edits done. Y'all send me good vibes.
I think we are. And AJ Ramirez said we love a Lucy Foley inspired thriller. So I'm sure we'd all agree.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I just have one last question for you. I know, as I mentioned at the beginning, you're such a tireless supporter of other writers. And I wonder what you're reading now that's either coming out or just out that you think is really great.
Right now, I am finishing up Riley Sager's upcoming novel. I think it pubs in 2 weeks, and it's House Across the Lake, and it's absolutely spellbinding and dazzling. And I haven't even gotten to the crazy twist that everyone's talking about. And I think that's what I'm going to do today is finish. And then, like, obviously, Katie's book, Katie Gutierrez, More Than You'll Ever Know, is a work of, it's just masterful. And it came out Tuesday. I can't recommend that highly enough. I also really loved Sam Bailey's Watch Out for Her. And I know she was on with you recently. Love, love, love that. It's such a great summer read. But you might be looking at your babysitter a little differently after that one.
All great. I mean, I loved Katie's and Sam's books, and I saw Riley Sager's tweet about the twist. Yes, I can't wait. It's definitely on my list.
I know. I can't wait.
All right. Well, May, thank you so much for being here with us, and just great to see you again. And I'm so excited about your work and coming next.
Thank you so much for having me, Polly, and thanks you guys for being here. It was so much fun.
Everybody, bye-bye.
Bye.